Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's Post-Executive Council Media Briefing. I am Davia Chambers. Let me take this time to humbly apologize for our late start. The Executive Council meeting ran late, but we still thought it best to update you this week. So we'll get straight into it. We are joined by Chief Secretary of Tobago, Honorable Fali Augustine, who will now address you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chambers. Good evening, Tobago. Good evening, those of you joining us from beyond the shores of Tobago, and a special evening to those of you joining us virtually. In fact, our Executive Council meeting ended perhaps about 15 minutes ago, and we ended 15 minutes ago particularly because we have some secretaries, in particular Secretary Henry and Secretary Joseph Wallace, who must attend to some conversations concerning the matters down at the Bucko Reef Marine Park. But there are some issues I wish to bring to your attention. We won't be long this Thursday evening, but these issues I feel the Tobago House of Assembly ought to bring to our attention. The first is we must look at what's happening out there in Goodwood with young Angelo Tobias Plaza. We all were shocked by the news. As a matter of fact, it was sometime after 4 a.m. I was contacted by T.H.A, and that's after 4 a.m. on, I think, Wednesday morning it was, when the matter was brought to light. The Tobago House of Assembly, through agencies like T.H.A, the T.H.A, we have been extremely helpful and supportive to the TTPS and other agencies of state in their effort to locate 2-year-old Angelo Tobias Plaza. We have been using all the technology available to us, from drones to boats we have access to even engaging specialist divers to go into the space. I've also been in conversation with Senior Superintendent Kirk on the matter as we collaborate in efforts to locate the young child, 2-year-old Angelo Tobias Plaza. A lot remains unclear, a lot remains unknown to us. There are more questions than there are answers, but certainly this reminds us of the duty of care we have for our children. And I want to remind the public that this goes beyond what the Tobago House of Assembly can do, should be doing, and what the Tobago House of Assembly is actually doing, to what we ought to do in our families, what we ought to do as parents, what we ought to do in our communities and other social institutions in ensuring that we protect the most vulnerable among us, and that includes our children. We all have a duty of care, and we need to be reminded of that, and that it takes the village to raise a child, but the village must also protect the child. And we must all do our part in protecting our children. The second issue I want to bring to your attention is that I want to take the time out to extend sincerest condolences to the family of Mr. Stanley Beard. And that's the only Beard we know spelled B-E-A-R-D, as opposed to how we traditionally spell the surname Beard. Mr. Stanley Beard was an elected member of the Tobago House of Assembly. He was a councillor in the Tobago House of Assembly. He served with responsibilities for tourism and environment. Mr. Beard is known as one of the founders for the Tobago Heritage Festival alongside Dr. Ella, G.D. Ella. He's known for his formative role in the starting up of the Blue Food Festival along with the community of Lansformy. Mr. Beard is, a huge thinker, big thinker. If I'm to go through my WhatsApp right now, I can see countless ideas, concerns from Mr. Beard. He's always coming up with progressive ideas for Tobago, and we're all saddened by his sudden passing. One of the things that you should know is that before this current Tobago House of Assembly, because we resumed in January and we approaching the 4-month mark. Just before we went out for the elections, we started an initiative where there were some scholarships targeting young people to go study in fields related to tourism, culture, and the arts. This initiative was started by former Secretary T.H.A. Boris, and as a matter of fact, you may or may not be aware that on the 31st of this month of May will be the closing of the scholarship that's already named after Stanley Beard. In fact, it's several scholarships there in the program with what we call DATAS, down at the Division of Education that is responsible for scholarships and the bursaries. And one of those scholarships is actually named after George Stanley Beard. And the deadline remains the 31st of May. We also have scholarships there named after Ansel George from Naturalist out in Castara, Royal Axbach Titus, Mr. Edward Hernandez, K. Allen, and Leandro Norrie. And of course, the funding is already released to education. And you are just reminded that the closing date for applications for these scholarships related to tourism, culture, and the arts remains the 31st of May. This is an initiative started last year, continuing into this year. While I extend condolences to Mr. Stanley Beard, it will be remiss of me to not make mention of two other notable individuals that passed on a short while back. We have Miss Marilyn Holder. Miss Marilyn Holder was a dear friend of mine, but not just a dear friend of mine, but Miss Marilyn Holder, she served as secretary in Mr. Robinson's office, his district office, between 1986 to 1991. So she served as his secretary here in Tobago while he was Prime Minister of the Republic. She passed on, and we are extending condolences to her family. I also must recognize that the oldest living individual on the island passed on, and that's Mr. Daniel Joseph Archer, otherwise known as Slow Joe. Everybody called him Slow Joe. Mr. Archer was 103 years old. Some time ago, I acknowledged the oldest living female and the oldest living male. Now we have sadly lost Slow Joe, and we extend condolences to his family and also to the community out there in Canaan Bonaccord. He certainly contributed a lot to community life, not just himself, but his family. His wife passed on before him. The couple and the family, they are known for perhaps the oldest surviving preschool on the island. And so we wish his family the very best. Moving on, just noting that the media review occurs tomorrow. The Secretary of Finance did in fact have the conversations with the Minister of Finance, and the media review happens tomorrow, and so we will be looking at what will be given to Tobago at the media review. One of the things that we have applied for and that we are hoping we will get additional funding for will be the start of the Scarborough Secondary School. In the first week in June, we have identified the first week in June for consultations with the end users. This will be final consultations on design by the end of June, and then we go back out to tender on the approved designs. Moving on, just note that this month of May has been quite busy for the people of Charlottesville and the community of Charlottesville. On the 11th of May, we celebrated 70 years of having the library in Charlottesville. And why are we giving this some global prominence? We're giving it global prominence because this started as a community library. It started with folks like Mr. Arthur Moore in an old house owned by M.L. Nicholson. The structure is more or less still there. And that's long before the government stepped in and the government built a library. Meaning the Tobago House of Assembly built a library for them. The community was running its library program even without the intervention of the government. And so it's not just celebrating 70 years of the existence of the library in Charlottesville, it's also reminding the community at large how important reading is and that it is still a valid pastime for our young people, and it's very important. But also we are celebrating the resilience of a community and the ability of a community to manage its own affairs. So that happened on Monday gone. This weekend is the fishing tournament in Charlottesville. So give some support. The T.H.A. is giving support. So this weekend is the fishing tournament in Charlottesville. Next weekend we have the Dodds diving, the extreme diving. In fact, officials from Dodds, they are already here. This is the year we should also be having some live broadcasting from ESPN and other international agencies. We have international travel groups that are on board and also supporting the bill out for Dodds diving. There will be a press conference next week. That will be led by team members in Dodds. So you'll get some more information where Dodds diving is concerned. Please note that the Tobago Carnival will be launched on the 29th of May. The 29th of May. And prior to the launch, you will get a press conference with the secretary and the CEO of the Festival Commission, and they will go through the budget with you. The Heritage Festival was launched last Friday. This year's Heritage Festival comes in at $6.5 million. With the theme, let me tell the whole story. This is the 39th year of having the Heritage Festival. Next year will be our 40th. Next year will be a very special celebration for us on the 40th year next year. But this year is the 39th year of having the festival. Just pointing out, because I know we have had some hiccups, unfortunately, when it comes to payment of service providers for the Heritage Festival. I ran some checks earlier today, and all the payments for 2025 were cleared. But I'm being told that there are two sets of people that require clearing of payments from 2024. The instruction is to clear all payments, not just for the Heritage Festival, but also for the other festivals and engagements that we have. The instruction to the division is to ensure that when releases are made to the division, because sometimes releases are sent to the division, and for reasons I cannot understand nor appreciate, we are not getting the releases being sent speedily from the division onto the company or the commission in this instance. So we intend that should no longer happen. That should no longer be the case, so that the bills at the Festival Commission can be cleared soonest. And going forward, there is a set structure to ensure payments are done on time, especially to those cultural ambassadors and those in the orange economy. Across the island, we continue to grapple with the issue of water. And I want to say that the time has come for Tobago to go beyond considering only groundwater sources to supply our homes, because evidently it's insufficient. I went and I took some photos of what's happening at the dam at the Kingsby, where my community in Speyside gets water from. And I can tell you it's just not enough water. That's just the reality. And of course, when we look at the management of what we do have, we have a challenge there with the leakages and all of that. Secretary Pantin is doing her best to see how best we can recover our roads in terms of bringing them to a state of significant repair. But we understand and have an appreciation for the fact that if we don't manage the sources we have now, we'll never have enough. But I'm saying that as an island, we have gone past groundwater sources, and we are in fact considering additional sources. Some time ago, I made mention of the Ministry of Public Utilities that's going out for the desalination plant, and the first target for Tobago will be the Charlottesville area. And no, we're not targeting it because that's in my district. We're targeting it because historically Charlottesville has just not had water. There are people in Charlottesville who have not had pipe-borne water in more than a decade based on where they live. That's just a fact. And so we want to remedy that problem and look at other sources around the island. But it's an opportunity for me to remind all Tobagonians that we have to manage the supply that we have. Now is not the time to wash the cars every single day. Now is not the time to water the lawn. Now is the time where we have to be judicious in our use of the water that we do in fact have across the island. At this time I will open up for questions. So if there are questions, members of the media, if you are here with us, I'm looking at myself on the monitor and seeing how red my eyes are, but we have had a very long day. Ms. Williams, TV6 News.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chief Secretary.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yes, I wanted to know from you with respect to the situation involving little Angelo Tobias Plaza. As a dad, what went through your mind when you received the news that Angelo was missing? And also, I wanted to hear from you, what message do you want to give to the nation with respect to this disappearance of this child? And also, in terms of the mid-year review, what information have you sent to the Minister of Finance with respect to, in addition to Scarborough Secondary School, what other initiatives you want to see on the table in terms of finances for Tobago?
I thank you. As a father of a 3-year-old, I couldn't help but ask a series of questions about, how can your 3-year-old go missing? How can you not account for them? Where would a 3-year-old be? Is this child alone and afraid somewhere? How terrifying it is for the child. This is a child at 2 years, perhaps the communication is not ideal in terms of speech. That's still forming. So I thought of all of those things. But as a nation, we have to do more to protect our children. I don't think we do enough to protect our children. And that cannot be just the government's job. It must include the first social institution that we all know, which is the family. How do we protect our children? They are extremely vulnerable. Are we ensuring that they are protected? Are we doing what is necessary in terms of reporting people who are abusing our children, or are we keeping it secret? We as a nation have for far too long, moments like this, we become alarmed, we cry, it's in the news, and the 9 days pass, and then we move on to the next big story, and everybody forgets the Angelos that have passed on. But how many children have we lost under suspicious circumstances? How many children have we lost in circumstances where we can't even figure out where they are to this day? And I'm simply saying that as a nation, we have to do better when it comes to protecting our children. And that job cannot be for the state alone. Yes, state actors have a role to play, and I will definitely want to see state actors like the TTPS being more vigilant, the Children's Authority being more efficient, etc., etc. But there is a role for all of us as individuals and for communities and families to play when it comes to protecting children. In terms of what was sent to the Minister of Finance, I rushed into the room without working with the missive, the communique that Secretary Roberts sent down to the Minister of Finance. And at this late stage, and even I'm not remembering all of the things, but for certain, I know Scarborough Sec is one of the issues that we discussed. We did discuss in that letter the opening of the A&R Robinson International Airport. However, we are committing, the Tobago House of Assembly itself is committing to financing that aspect and ensuring we can get the airport open on time. And we have, in fact, offered, and we're just waiting on necessary sign-off from the Airports Authority, but we have offered to assist with the relocating of the small and micro enterprises from the old terminal to the new terminal to ensure that they're set up. I mean, certainly you don't expect them to go and spread tablecloth on a table and sell benet and tambran. At this stage, we want a dignified way in which people can ply their trade, and we have offered some support there in terms of the build out and making the airport feel first class, world class, and so on. So we're just waiting to hear from the central government in that regard, but I'll have Secretary Roberts perhaps issue with a short press release that will indicate all the other areas that she itemized for the Minister of Finance. Apologies, it's extremely late in the evening and it's been a long day for me in particular. Yes, Mr. Nicholas, CNC3.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chief Secretary.
Yes, good evening.
Yeah. Can you tell us, in terms of the allocation that you are seeking for Scarborough Sec, do you have any idea what it is? And also, the Attorney General announced that there was a national security threat in Parliament last Friday. So the TPP has 2 MPs sitting in Parliament. Was the party alerted to this development? And do you have any comment in terms of what transpired?
Yes. In terms of your first question, the ask is for around $60 million for Scarborough Secondary. That's a build project. So in other words, we're not looking to use the modality of design, build, finance. We're looking to use the modality where we pay a mobilization of around 30%. $60 million will not be enough. That may not meet 30% when we consider what the internal estimates might be. However, we are prepared to use funds of our own to attach to that to ensure we could get Scarborough Secondary School going and get it started. So we're looking for around $60 million, which is just about paying the mobilization, and we will fund the project along the lines as stipulated by whatever the future contract will state, meaning that we'll pay at intervals based on the progress of the work. I should say that there was a tender that went out for approximately 2 years. In fact, let me give you some information. Now, just 1 second. Let me pull that up. Right. So we did have a tender that went out approximately on the original tender went out February 7th, 2024, and submissions came in around June 13, 2024. We have been we have a team and the project managers, they have been reviewing the designs, and they felt that all of the designs were woefully inadequate. We had a large technical meeting 2 Fridays ago, where I brought all the technical staff from across the T.H.A. into Shaw Park. And as a good drill master, I started drilling down on what's holding some projects back, why we're not moving. And this was one of the issues cited. So as it is right now, internally meaning workers in the T.H.A., architects within the T.H.A. are finalizing a design for the school, a brand new design for the school. They expect it to be completed by the end of May. That's the mandate. The first week in June, we will sit and we will go through the proposed design with the end users, meaning representatives from the school, the PTA, student body, alumni, etc. Have that finalized and go back out to tender with the new design for submissions of proposals for the design that we come up with ourselves. We have asked for funding in the media review to assist with starting the project. We will need to pay mobilization in this fiscal for that project, and we are hoping, I can't confirm that that is the case because I have not had a confirmation from the Minister of Finance what he will give to Tobago in the media review. But we're hoping that we could get at least 60 million thereabout for Scarborough Secondary School so that we could get that project started. Your second question, Mr. Nicholas, remind me of your second question. I think I missed, you had a second one?
Yes. It was concerning the gang threat announced by the Attorney General
yes.
in Parliament.
So yes, we have 2 MPs. The matter was discussed to some degree with us here in Tobago. I am actually supposed to meet with MP Sampson this evening around 7 p.m. As tired as I am, I have that scheduled for this evening. And so I don't want to go in too much details, but that's one of the issues that we will certainly discuss because we want to ensure that our members of parliament remain safe. You know, I will just say this one thing, though, and this is a general statement. I'm not speaking specific to what the Attorney General spoke about. I'm making a very general statement. We have seen globally, with the most recent being the attempted assassination on the US president, Mr. Trump. And I always look internally to our operations, both at the T.H.A. level and at the national level. And I've always asked myself whether we have been sufficiently serious about security. There is an unfortunate notion in this space that somehow having security is some rank or privilege, some luxury. It is not really a luxury. When you have security, you essentially cede all of your privacy. Everywhere you go, somebody is behind you. You go into the washroom, you go into the toilet, somebody right outside the door. You cede your privacy. So it's not a luxury at all. And we need to remove this notion that somehow security attached to high office holders is a luxury. It's really not. We have to look at the implications for investments to the country, for example. Imagine, God forbid, something happens to a high office holder in the country. How do you convince foreign companies, multinational, large conglomerates globally to come and invest in your country? They will question whether your country is serious, whether your country has a security problem. No, we do in fact have a security problem as a country that we need to admit and that we need to take very strong positions on. And I see the government attempting to do so and trying to bring certain strong measures to the parliament. Granted, they get support for some, they don't get support for others. But we have to get to the point where we realize that providing security for high office holders is really not a luxury, but that it is something that is necessary in ensuring that the country's global positioning and standing remains. And you don't have to like the office holder to agree with that position. You really don't have to like the office holder to agree with that position. It's just something that should come with the office, I think. Ms. Jackson, TTT News. And I believe it's the last set of questions here with TTT News.
Good evening, Chief Secretary.
Yes, good evening.
My question is in regards to the water supply. Is there a timeline for the desalination plant in Charlottesville? And also, what other measures are being considered in the short term to alleviate problems throughout Tobago?
I cannot give you a timeline with regards to the desalination plant because, as you would appreciate, that's been done by the Ministry of Public Utilities through international funding that they have received. So it's not a T.H.A. project. The T.H.A. is a facilitator, the T.H.A. is supporting, and the T.H.A. is ready to provide, for example, land assets that are necessary to have the plant up and running. Similar to what we did with WASA in the Goldsboro area. So there's a plant under construction right now in the Goldsboro area. The T.H.A. facilitated, the T.H.A. provided the land asset. As a matter of fact, the minister at the time is currently the opposition whip, the opposition whip in Parliament, Mr. Gonzalez. And notwithstanding the friction we have had between his party and my party, we made the lands available in quick time to WASA and to his office so that the necessary can be done. Because one thing I will not do is play politics with something as fundamental to human survival as water. So we'll continue to provide the support. We can't necessarily provide a timeline. In terms of in the short term, what do we do immediately? Well, firstly, we have to continue to educate the public about measures that we can use to conserve water. We did a project about 2 years ago in Charlottesville in concert with Eric, where we were going to homes, changing out taps, changing out fixtures in the toilet plumbing, so as to save water and the amount of water, reduce the amount of water using with each flush. We look at tank systems. And so we're looking now at how we can expand that project beyond what was done in Charlottesville as a short-term measure to treat with the fact that many people in that community don't get ready access to pipe-borne water or running water. And expanding that beyond Charlottesville to other areas across the island. That we can do in the short term along with the educating of the public. But we have to conserve water, and we have to now look at other mechanisms, including the southwestern part of the island. All right, I said that was my last question, but I just looked over my notes and I saw something here that I wanted to touch on. And I want to rely on my notes because I know how you in the media can go. You can take simple statements and create misleading headlines and have the whole island thinking they're about to pay $1,000, including the Chief Secretary, about to pay $1,000 to fly between the both islands when that's not the case. I don't want my statements to be misconstrued on this matter. This is with regards to the Marriott development at Back Bay, or what is known as Rocky Bay, there just after the Mount Irving Beach facility. Prior to coming into office in 2021, I bemoaned the fact that this project was announced essentially by members of the central government in Tobago, and they had the then Chief Secretary just sitting there as an accessory to this project. And I have held the same position with Sanders as with Marriott, that these projects must be T.H.A. led. T.H.A. has as a fifth schedule responsibility tourism, and nobody from anywhere else should come on the island and should direct how a tourism project ought to go. So I had those criticisms very early on with regards to that project. However, I have always acknowledged that Tobago needed, and we still are in need of better quality rooms. We need that so that we can be competitive, so that we can attract the front of the plane, meaning business and first class passengers. General rule in plane economics is that the business and first class passengers tend to pay for the entire plane. And once you could attract the front of the plane, you are more likely to get an airline saying, yes, we will come to your destination. That is a known fact throughout the tourism industry. The hotels that we have had serious issues with them. As a matter of fact, BA was on island earlier this year, BA Holidays, and they have decided that they will not market 2 of our resorts. I will not name those resorts. 2 of our resorts, they will no longer market them on their platform simply because of the complaints they were getting from guests. So we need 4 and 5 star rooms. I came into office in 2021 as Chief Secretary, and as a responsible Chief Secretary, despite being critical of how this project was being handled, on the 19th of March 2022, I left Tobago, journeyed to the Bricks Hotel, that is also owned by the same developers wishing to do the Marriott in Tobago, and had an extensive meeting there with the developers for the Marriott Hotel Tobago, 19th of March 2022. On the 21st of April 2022, as Chief Secretary, I entertained, I facilitated, I hosted the very first real site visit on the land. I brought the developers, I brought the surfers, I brought people from the historical societies, I brought the environmentalists, I invited the community, and we walked the length and breadth of that estate there at Little Rockley Bay. That's the 21st of April 2022. Consultations began with the community thereafter. And although at the time Secretary Boris was representing us at those consultations, the instruction was that we should not go to the consultation to try to influence the outcome or to influence the thoughts and opinions of the people at these consultations. These consultations were heated, with people having varying views, and there was in fact a very vociferous group saying, no, we should not have the hotel at all. My position as Chief Secretary, this government's position as Chief Secretary, remains practically fourfold. And let me list them. Number one, if the hotel is to be built, then the T.H.A. must be very much involved as a leader in the space in ensuring that it is built in accordance with what Tobago needs and will not, in fact, destroy the socio-cultural and environmental landscape of Tobago. That's one. Number two, that the environmental concerns be met. And that's why there is the EMA. The T.H.A. does not run the EMA. The T.H.A. does not instruct the EMA on what to do, but the EMA has its own rubric, its own methodology that it must follow before giving clearance. And please note, showing up at a consultation saying, no, I don't want the hotel, does not mean that EMA won't give clearance. The human geography is only one aspect. EMA primarily will look at what's the impact on the environment and whether the developer is building in such a way as to minimize the impact on the environment. The third area I have always raised is the issue of the history behind the place. On that land, we have a sizable fort, one of its kind, the ruins of a fort, smack in the center of the estate. Just where there is a little crest, there is the remnants of a fort there. As a matter of fact, I think it was Mr. Hochoy Charles, either him or Lennox Noon, one of the two of them, when they were in charge of the T.H.A, brought an archaeologist, I think from out of Germany, and that report is still lodged at the library. I think I have a copy in my office upstairs. I can have that report published online if you are a history buff like myself and you're interested and intrigued in seeing what's in that report. So the historical aspects of the estate must be acknowledged, must be preserved. As a matter of fact, I've always said that the historical aspect can in fact become an attraction in and of itself to the resort that they are attempting to build. And the fourth area I always wished that the fourth stipulation we had is that beach access must remain public, and that there must remain a public beach access. And having a public beach access simply means that the public has access to the beach. The public does not have to get permission from the hotelier to be able to use the beach. And the hotel developers have stated time and time again that in their plan, and I have not seen their final plan, but in their plan, there will be a separate and dedicated public entrance or entry point to the beach. So you will continue to have access to the beach. So let me go again. T.H.A leadership, environmental consideration, the historical consideration, and public beach access. I've always contended that once these have been met, the hotel should be built. It cannot be that the developers are meeting all of these requirements, the environmental, the historical, providing public beach access. In fact, the hotel developers, when we did the site visit, stated explicitly that they have no intention of building anything on the beach itself, that they will confine their building to the plateau that's overlooking the beach. They just want to provide access. And if these are all met, as I've said, then there is no reason to tell the hoteliers not to build. I want us to also appreciate what we have in Tobago. We just celebrated 250 years of the main ridge rainforest. So a sizable chunk of our interior has been preserved since 1776. We are left to develop the island sandwiched between that main ridge rainforest and the coast. That's all we have for hotels, for homes, for schools, for road access, for businesses. That's all we have. And so the response cannot be, no, we don't want a hotel. What the response must be is once these areas have been met, the hotel should be built. Similarly, if you go back on my statements about the Sanders, I had issues with the MOU that was signed and the tenants of the MOU. I had issues with the business model where the state was proposing to spend close to $1 billion to build that hotel as opposed to the hotel billing for itself. And I had concerns about whether or not they were going to design in a way that will preserve the environment and public beach access or public access to the area there. Same considerations here. Once these considerations have been met, the hotel should be built. And I know some of my environmentalist friends will be very annoyed and angry with me because they believe under no circumstance the hotel should be built. My position is different. This is 2026. There is technology and there are building methodologies that can be used for us to build in environmentally safe ways. One, there must be T.H.A leadership on the matter. So this can be a case of the central government coming to Tobago and dictating and directing a hotel being built and how it should be built. Two, all of the environmental considerations must be met, and EMA is the one who is the best to judge that at this time. And the AMA is saying that they have met all the requisite environmental considerations to build in a way that safeguards the environment. 3, the historical must be preserved, and so I want to see the final designs and how they propose to preserve the artifacts that are there lodged on the real estate. And 4, public beach access must be preserved, which means surfers can continue to go and surf. There is no indication from the developers that they are going to do anything in the water that's going to stop you from surfing there and using the space. And these are the considerations that I have for saying, these are the considerations that must be met for the hotel to be built. Sorry. Again, excuse me. It's been an extremely long and tiring day, having going from very early this morning. So, yes, I just wanted to bring that bit of information to your attention because it has been in the space, and I think it needed to be addressed by the Tobago House of Assembly. And you get to see clearly the steps that we took on our end. 1, meeting on 19th of March 2022. 2, the site visit we hosted way back in 21st of April 2022. 3, the open consultations without the T.H.A. trying to influence the outcome. Meaning the T.H.A. didn't pack the consultation hall, we didn't try to get people to go there and say yes, or to influence the outcome. We just let the community do its work naturally. And then I itemized the 4 areas that the T.H.A. has consideration for. And the T.H.A. is saying once those conditions are met, then the hotel is free to be built. If you think any of these considerations are being violated, my office remains open to you. Just write to my office, send an email, and we certainly will address it. Because as far as I'm concerned, it must be the T.H.A.'s job now to keep the developers in line to ensure that they build in accordance to the permits and what is allowed environmentally, and what is allowed insofar as the preservation of history and the preservation of public beach access. Again, I want to thank you. It's now 6:58 p.m. I know many of you know you would have missed the time for the news, but some days for Executive Council, we just have so much, we just keep going. And this was just one of the days that we kept going until after 6 p.m. When we come to Exec Council, the truth is we try not to rush. We try to take our time, go through all the notes, discuss all of the policy issues that need addressing for the period. And this was just one of those extra long days. But I felt that you have not seen me or the executive address the media, I think over a 2-week period. We had press releases and so on in between, and I did not want the day to go without you hearing from us. So again, thank you very much to members of the media. Thank you for joining us for the post-exec press briefing, and I will hear from each other soon, I guess. We will keep hearing from each other late evening. So have a good one. Please be safe. Please, communities, it's not just your job to raise children, it is your job as well to protect our children. Families, you have a duty as well to be protectors and not to be violators. Thank you. Have a good evening. Please enjoy the weekend that's coming. Be reminded that Charlottesville is the place to be this month. Charlottesville is always the place to be. In fact, my electoral district is always the place to be. Just boasting here. But Charlottesville is in the limelight this month with the fishing tournament coming up over the weekend. We have Dodds diving next week. Also next week you will hear from the Secretary of Tourism and Culture, as well as the CEO of the Commission, the Festival Commission. I spoke to you about the Heritage Festival that's in its 39th year this year. We again extend sympathies to the family of Mr. Stanley Beard, Miss Marilyn Hola, and Mr. Daniel Joseph Archer of Slojo. And I gave all information I am permitted to give in so far as what's happening with Angelo Tobias Plaza. Thank you. Enjoy the evening. Please be safe on our roads. Be safe as you enjoy the weekend ahead.